Dawn crept over Troy, its first pale rays brushing the battered stones and silent ramparts of the ancient city. The world seemed to hold its breath, as if even the wind dared not disturb the fragile peace before the coming storm. Shadows stretched long and thin across the fields, and the air was cool, heavy with the scent of dew and distant smoke. Eos, the goddess of the dawn, painted the sky in rose and gold, her gentle touch transforming the heavens into a canvas of hope and foreboding. The clouds blushed with color, as if reflecting the blood that would soon be spilled below. High above, Zeus, king of the gods, gazed down from his throne on Olympus. With a wave of his mighty hand, he sent a blood-red mist swirling over the Greek camp, a sign, a warning, and a curse. The unnatural haze clung to the earth, seeping into every tent and heart, stirring each soldier to a fever for battle. It was as if the gods themselves demanded conflict, their will made manifest in the crimson dawn. The Greeks awoke, restless and driven, their dreams haunted by omens and the promise of violence. The air was thick with dread and anticipation, every man feeling the weight of destiny pressing upon him. Some whispered prayers to the gods, others sharpened their blades in silence, all knowing that this day would be unlike any other. Agamemnon, the mighty king and leader of the Greeks, was the first to rise. He donned his shining armor, each piece gleaming in the uncertain light, and strode from his tent with a resolve that would not be shaken. His face was set, his eyes cold with purpose, for he knew the fate of his people rested on his shoulders. His commands rang out, sharp and clear, cutting through the morning stillness. At his word, the camp erupted into a frenzy of preparation. Men rushed to their posts, armor was strapped on, and weapons were checked and rechecked. The clamor of readiness echoed across the plain, a chorus of courage and fear. Armor clanged, horses neighed, and captains shouted orders as the Greek army formed a glittering line before their trench. Shields caught the rising sun, spears bristled like a field of deadly grain, and the warrior's breath steamed in the chill air. Each man took his place shoulder to shoulder, united by purpose, and the knowledge that the eyes of gods and men were upon them. Across the fields, the Trojans stirred within their mighty walls. Warriors gathered on the battlements, their faces grim as they gazed toward the enemy. Fathers, sons, and brothers tightened their grips on spear and shield, hearts pounding with fear and defiance. The city itself seemed to tremble, bracing for the onslaught to come. Above it all, the gods watched, their intentions hidden, their power palpable in the charged air. The stage was set, the players assembled, and the day would test every soul, mortal and immortal alike. The fate of Troy and the legacy of heroes would be decided beneath this blood-red dawn. The army stood ready, eyes locked across the field, the fate of Troy hanging in the balance. In that breathless moment before the clash, all the world seemed to pause, waiting for the first cry of war to shatter the dawn. Agamemnon moved through his ranks, inspiring courage and discipline. He exchanged words with Nestor, praised Ajax and Teucer, and reminded all of the justice they sought. His voice promised victory to the brave. On the Trojan side, Hector rallied his men, moving among them as both leader and brother. He inspired hope, urging them to defend their homes and families. Polydamas and Aeneas stood at his side, their counsel and strength vital. The Trojans, united under Hector, burned with resolve. The two armies faced each other, a tense silence falling. Zeus watched, his plan for Trojan glory unfolding. The air was thick with anticipation, the storm of war about to break. The world held its breath. The signal sounded, echoing across the plain as the first rays of dawn broke over the horizon. The war horn's call was both a summons and a warning, its ancient notes trembling in the morning air, promising glory for some and doom for others. Warriors tightened their grips on spear and shield, hearts pounding in anticipation of the chaos to come. With a thunderous roar, the armies collided, bronze against bronze, the earth itself trembling beneath the stampede of thousands. Spears shattered, shields splintered, and the cries of the wounded mingled with the clash of metal, filling the air with a cacophony of war. At the forefront, Hector led the Trojan charge, a whirlwind of bronze and fury. His armor gleamed in the rising sun as he cut down Greek warriors with relentless force, his presence inspiring his men and striking terror into the hearts of his foes. Each swing of his sword seemed to carve a path through the chaos, and for a moment it appeared the Trojans would sweep all before them. But the Greek line, though battered, did not break. Agamemnon, king and commander, surged forward, rallying his men with a voice that cut through the din. He moved with deadly precision, his leadership turning panic into resolve, and his sword into a beacon for his warriors. Agamemnon became the immovable rock at the heart of the Greek defense, slaying Trojan champions with ruthless efficiency. His courage and strength turned the tide, and the Greeks found new hope in his example. Inspired by their leader, the Greeks surged forward, regaining ground lost in the initial onslaught. Their shouts rose above the clash, a wave of determination pushing them onward as they pressed the Trojans back step by step. In the thick of battle, Agamemnon struck down Priam's sons, Issos and Antiphos, their fall sending a shock through the Trojan ranks. The loss of these princes was a bitter blow, and fear rippled through the enemy lines. The Trojans faltered, their courage wavering as they were forced back toward the looming safety of their city walls. The once confident advance became a desperate retreat, the hope of victory slipping from their grasp. The promise of Trojan victory seemed broken, replaced by despair and the grim reality of defeat. Broken shields and fallen comrades littered the field, a testament to the battle's ferocity. The Greeks pressed on, their cheers rising above the chaos, each step forward a hard-won triumph. The taste of victory was on their lips, and for a moment, it seemed nothing could stop them. Yet, as Agamemnon paused amidst the carnage, a sudden shift swept the battlefield. Fate, ever fickle, hovered over the warriors, ready to change the course of the day in an instant. The momentum of battle shifted with every heartbeat, lines surging and faltering, the outcome uncertain. Each moment brought new danger, new heroism, and new loss. Blood stained the fields, soaking the earth beneath the feet of gods and men alike. High above, the silent statues of the gods watched, unmoved by mortal suffering, their gaze cold and eternal. The storm of war raged on, unrelenting, as destiny and death danced together beneath the stormy skies of Troy. As victory neared, Agamemnon was struck by Coon, seeking vengeance for his brother. The spear pierced Agamemnon's arm, pain searing through him. He retaliated, slaying Coon, but blood poured from his wound. Agamemnon fought on, his will unbroken, but his strength ebbed with every heartbeat. The pain grew unbearable, his vision blurred. Realizing he could not continue, he called for his chariot. With a final command to hold the line, he retreated from the field. The Greeks watched their king depart, fear spreading through the ranks. Their anchor was gone, and uncertainty gripped the army. The Trojans sensed weakness. The tide of battle was about to turn. Hector saw Agamemnon's retreat and seized the moment. He rallied the Trojans, urging them to press the attack. The Greeks, leaderless, faltered. Discipline crumbled into chaos. Panic spread and the line began to break. Ulysses and Diomedes fought to rally the men, forming a desperate defense. Hector's assault was relentless, cutting down Greek champions. Paris, from afar, wounded Diomedes with an arrow, further weakening the Greeks. The Greek defense thinned, the Trojans surged forward. The battle teetered on the edge of disaster for the Greeks. The gods watched as heroes fell and the tide shifted. Diomedes, wounded, called to Ulysses for help. Ulysses shielded him as Diomedes pulled the arrow free, then retreated. Ulysses stood alone, surrounded by Trojans. Socos wounded him, but Ulysses killed his attacker. Outnumbered and bleeding, Ulysses cried for aid. Ajax heard and charged through the enemy, rescuing his friend. Menelaus helped Ulysses back to safety as Ajax held the line. One by one, Greek champions fell or withdrew, the defense growing weaker. The Trojans pressed their advantage, sensing victory. The Greek camp was on the brink. Only a few heroes stood between the Trojans and the ships. The fate of the Greeks hung by a thread. The Trojans, unstoppable, drove the Greeks back to their final defense, the wall before the ships. Ajax fought a stubborn retreat, buying time as the Greeks regrouped. The trench halted Trojan chariots, but Hector refused to retreat. He ordered his men to assault the wall on foot, organizing them into columns. The Trojans roared, swarming the trench and climbing toward the ramparts. Polypoetes and Leontius held the gate, cutting down attackers. The wall became a desperate battleground. The Greeks fought for survival, the Trojans for glory. The outcome balanced on a knife's edge. The wall was their last hope. The storm intensified. Sarpedon, son of Zeus, led the Lycians in a fierce assault on another section of the wall. He urged his men forward, deflecting missiles and inspiring courage. Despite heavy losses, Sarpedon killed Alcmaeon and tore down a section of the wall, creating a breach. The Trojans surged through, overwhelming the defenders. Hector saw the opening and charged the main gate, wielding a massive boulder. With divine strength, he smashed the gates open. Hector was the first inside, his army flooding in behind him. The Greek defenses collapsed. The camp was exposed. The final battle began among the ships. The Greeks faced annihilation. The gods' will was unfolding. The Trojans stormed the Greek camp, their goal clear: burn the black ships. The air was thick with the roar of battle cries and the clash of bronze. For years the Greeks had besieged Troy, but now the tables had turned. The Trojans, emboldened by their recent victories, surged forward with a single burning purpose: to destroy the fleet that had brought their enemies to their shores. The black ships, symbols of Greek power and hope, now stood vulnerable, their fate hanging in the balance. Hector led the charge, his voice rising above the chaos as he called for torches. Flames flickered in the dusk, casting wild shadows across the sand. The Trojans pressed forward, torches held high, determined to set the Greek ships ablaze. The battlefield was a storm of confusion. Shouts, screams, and the crackle of fire filled the air as Hector's warriors fought with relentless fury. The Greeks, desperate and outnumbered, made their last stand on the beach. Shields locked and spears bristling, they fought with the courage of men who knew they had nowhere left to run. The sand beneath their feet was stained with sweat and blood as they struggled to hold the line, defending their only means of escape from utter destruction. Ajax, towering above his comrades, fought atop a ship, fending off wave after wave of attackers. His shield was battered, his sword arm weary, but he refused to yield. Each blow he struck was a desperate attempt to keep the enemy from setting the ships alight. The deck beneath him shook with the force of battle, and the cries of the wounded echoed over the water. Hera, watching from the heights of Olympus, could not bear to see the Greeks fall. With cunning and resolve, she devised a plan to turn the tide. Disguising herself, she approached Zeus, the king of the gods, and lulled him into a deep, enchanted sleep, hoping to give the Greeks a fighting chance. With Zeus distracted, Poseidon, god of the sea, rose from the crashing waves and entered the fray. His presence filled the Greeks with renewed strength and courage. For a brief, shining moment, the tide of battle shifted. The Greeks rallied, pushing back against the Trojan onslaught with a surge of hope and determination. Ajax, seizing the moment, struck Hector down with a mighty blow, forcing the Trojans into a temporary retreat. The Greeks cheered, their spirits lifted by the sight of their greatest foe brought low. For a heartbeat, it seemed as if victory might be within their grasp. But the gods are fickle, and fate is never easily changed. Zeus awoke, furious at Hera's deception. His wrath shook the heavens, and he sent Apollo to restore Hector's strength and spirit. The sky darkened, thunder rolled, and the balance of power shifted once more. Revitalized by Apollo, Hector returned to the battlefield, unstoppable and filled with divine power. He shattered Ajax's spear with a single blow and led the Trojans in a renewed assault. The Greeks, exhausted and overwhelmed, were driven back toward their burning ships, their hopes fading with every step. The Trojans set fire to the ships, flames rising into the sky like beacons of destruction. The crackling inferno consumed wood and hope alike, lighting the night with the terrible beauty of war. The Greeks watched in horror as their fleet, their last link to home, was swallowed by fire. Triumph and terror mingled in the smoky air as the Greek camp burned. Some wept for their lost comrades, others shouted in defiance or despair. The Trojans exulted in their victory, while the Greeks faced the grim reality of defeat. The fate of the Greeks was sealed by fire and the will of the gods. Above the battlefield, divine figures watched as mortals struggled and perished, their destinies shaped by forces beyond their control. Troy's victory was at hand, the dawn breaking over a battlefield forever changed by fire, courage, and the whims of the gods.